cost a lot of things that have to be in place with respect to ramps and that kind of thing. We'd have to put additional ramps in. We have the access, of course, through the pub area for a wheelchair, but we'd have to probably put more in. And we'd have adequate insurance coverage to take care of that if something did happen. So a lot of little things that people don't see that are in play there with the insurance coverage. A lot of it's educational, like I said, and just keeping the staff up to speed on some of the things they should be aware of. Workers' comp losses have had an impact, obviously, on our experience at the clubs over the years, and we've tried to help them with hiring usually a consultant or a third-party administrator for the workers' comp, getting into workers' comp pools in Ohio and that sort of thing to keep the cost down, but also to help us with the prevention side of that. So we've been very lucky, knock on wood, because we've had major losses come occasionally, but none of them have cost the club. Unfortunately, they've cost some people their lives in some cases, or major injuries. The biggest storm we had in recent years was about 4 years ago when we lost our trees, and many of our trees. We had 150, 160 trees that were affected, including the big tree on 14 that was the signature hole at the time. There was an endorsement on our contract that would cost us $200 a year, that was specifically meant for country club golf courses exposures, where there would be coverage for tees and greens and tree removal for such a loss. Now, if you remember, that was a tornado about 4 or 5 years ago, but one of those that just kind of came down and back up, almost like it landed in Lakewood Country Club and no other place, and wiped out our trees, and for the most part. There was not one building that was damaged. So without, most insurance contracts would have covered if the tree fell on the clubhouse or something, sure. But it wouldn't cover the other parts of that loss. That loss, including, it happened in August, and of course right in the middle of the club championships, and a lot of revenue for that month was coming in, or would have come in. We lost about 2 weeks worth of revenues, and between that and the tree loss and the removals and all that, it was $110,000, $115,000 loss that wouldn't have normally been covered under most insurance contracts, and it was covered under ours with, I think it was like a $200 endorsement that was on there and has been on there for some time. So a lot of things like that are kind of under the covers that all of a sudden you don't think they're going to happen, and that's the way insurance is. You don't think it's ever going to happen to you. It's always going to happen to somebody else. And we've got coverages on things like pollution and some other things you wouldn't normally think about, but there are exposures. Anytime you put pesticides down on the ground, somebody could somehow get sick, I guess. And we have proper signs, if you've noticed, around, for instance, on some of the things that we need to warn people about and let them know that they're...
Well, you're really a preventive service for
That's a large
accidents.
Yeah, it's more of a risk management committee versus an insurance committee, because we've got the basic coverages in there that we think we need that are going to keep us,
The boilerplate is standard, but trying to get underneath that, like all these things that you're talking about, which do not cost a lot of money, wind up to be very expensive if the occurrence of that wind shear storm that came through here that you talked about.
Right, and I play, and of course I'm the chairman, so I don't place the coverage. It's placed through another agency and other guys on the committee and so forth. So it keeps that issue of where one individual member was responsible for the insurance on the club, and got a premium was paid and got a commission and all that. No. I want, because when there is a loss, I want to be the one that represents the club.
Right.
And that way the agent can be the one that represents both the committee and their client and the insurance company. But they're kind of caught in the middle if they have to play both sides. So we like the way it's split up. And many other clubs have called us and copied that approach.
It's very interesting what you just explained, because most people, including myself, when you think of insurance, it's just insurance, a liability a little bit here, a little bit, but it goes far beyond the basic, but way into the deep unknown, I'll call it, almost to that point, trying to go ahead, and when you really analyze it, you find out that it doesn't, as you mentioned, cost that much more to put an endorsement for these certain areas. But an insurance group who doesn't follow it through as detailed as you have over all the years as well as the committee. By your
Well, we had some slips and falls on some of the railings, you know, when they were wooden, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big discussion. Golf carts and people and alcohol don't mix too well, so there's always a few things going on there. But think about even things that go, you know, the first thing everybody thinks about is our equipment and our trucks and that kind of thing. Well, what about when somebody's out there representing Lakewood Country Club driving their own car?
Oh, yeah.
Off premises somewhere.
Yeah.
Going to make a delivery, going to pick something up at the bank, whatever. Those are exposures too that we look at, and so oftentimes it's not just what's here, but what's also from a liability standpoint.
How many men are on the insurance committee?
We have 4.
4?
Mm-hmm.
And are these people who are either familiar with insurance as well? Or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and the 4 of us have been. We've had 5 and 6 others, or a couple others, but the 4 of us have been on the committee for at least 15 years.
Right.
So we got a pretty good hand. We just added another one, so I should say 5. Try to break a few new ones in along the way here. But.
You're an unsung hero without having to wave your flag and say, boy, these guys have done a great job.
Well, that's not why we're doing it. It's one contribution I can make back to the club. The way I look at it, I love this place, and I've been on virtually every committee. I haven't been on the board by design. I've asked not to be on the board because I like to come here and enjoy myself a little bit from time to time. But the insurance thing is one way I could make a contribution, I figured. So.
And you have, greatly.
Well, thank you.
Well done. Well done.
I think of a lot of other experiences at the club that are very memorable outside of the golf course. Obviously, we've had a wonderful pool, and I've spent very little time at the pool, but some over the years with the kids growing up, and some on the tennis courts as well. But I think of the number of close relationships, social relationships that we've had inside the clubhouse. And, you know, when our kids were growing up, particularly, as you guys may know, you know, there wasn't hardly ever, you know, when Santa was here, or Easter, or Mother's Day, there wasn't a question where we were going to go. We were going to go to Lakewood normally if we were in town, and those were special events. I bet we've been to the country store 25 times at least. You know, one of those great Lakewood traditions goes way back, and just other things like that have been a wonderful experience inside the clubhouse. Great food over the long run, and a wonderful staff, and I'm glad to hear you've recognized Bernie and some other people that have been. We got Rick Wells this year that's going to be here for 50 years, concluding his caddy days, I think, and some other guys that are unsung heroes that we just kind of take it for granted when we pull up or when we come in. But they're wonderful stability factors and wonderful servants to the club, you know, and to the members.
Well, as you think about that, John, and reminisce back to the days when you first joined here, what have you noticed the changes in this club to be over the last 30, 40 years?
You know, the club stays the same, David, but I'm getting older. That's what I've noticed. I'd like to say I don't change and everybody else does, but it doesn't work that way. Of course, you forget everybody else is getting older, too. Until they tell you how old they are. I go, oh, my gosh. Well, the club's very unique, obviously, because in a lot of respects, there's a lot of changes that go on all the time, every year. And in other respects, there's not much that changes at all, if you think about it. It's still a wonderful extension, I think, of your family and your social life and your business life. In my case, business life. I think most guys do have a business extension, or they probably aren't going to do it for the most part. At least they want to have a nice place to entertain their clients, customers, and a nice place to take their family. And of course, you meet a heck of a network of people. So in answer to your question, you know, obviously we got the patio out there and a new pool here, and, you know, a few minor changes over the years, and some of the holes themselves. I love the fact we have a master plan and have lived with that master plan, so that the integrity of the Tillinghast design is preserved for the decades to come. Excuse me. Obviously, the one thing that has changed is the people change somewhat, and not themselves, but the new ones come in and other ones die off. I, for one, hate to drive in that driveway and see that flag half-mast, because you probably lost a friend. And I think we all hate that. but it's just a part of life that we have to live with. On the other hand, I would have never guessed that I'd have some of the friendships and some of the people that I've known for a number of years, and they aren't necessarily all the time close friends, but you know, you could call them and on whatever it was, and they would be there to help you in a minute. Close friends meaning, it's not like a lot of the guys and gals that you socialize with them all the time and going to dinner or whatever. You socialize here with them, but because you both came here, but no, you didn't come here necessarily together. The other thing that's been, on the contrary, the other thing that's been surprising to me is that there are people that move on, and every once in a while they're not here for 30 years. They're here for 5, and then they go somewhere else, or they keep their non-resident status, and every once in a while you'll walk in July in an afternoon, and there they are, and you haven't seen them for 10 years, and that's you don't. I was 27 when I joined, so I sure didn't expect that. I figured everybody will be there forever, Not true. People move on with their professions and have to move to other places, so obviously between the clubhouse and the golf course, the tennis courts, and the pool, there's a pretty good foundation for a lot of things to be stable for years to come, hopefully.
Well, I guess to follow up on that, John, the last decade or so, it seems like society's been changing. The times have changed to the point that it seems, and the economy has had a big impact too.
Certainly has.
I'm just wondering your thoughts about the future of country clubs.
Well,
how do you see that down the road?
I'd like to paint, I told you I'm optimistic. I'd like to paint a better picture than I'm going to tell you, but the reality check, I think, is that we are seeing what's going to happen in the future, and we are seeing it little steps at a time. Since I've been here in '86, that was a major change, obviously, when the tax reform change came in there, and the treatment on dues and that sort of thing. And you saw what happened to particularly the people that this was a perk that they really got because they were a partner in an accounting firm or a law firm or something, but they really didn't want it. They didn't. It wasn't their money coming out of their pocket, coming out of their company that was paying for it. So we had some changes then. Then we went through a good growth curve, obviously, with what was going on in Westlake and the West Cuyahoga County area, still going on, and to some extent with Avon and Lorain County. But other than that, we're not growing anymore here. So, and Northeastern Ohio's not growing. So guess what? We now have a membership problem, like every other club, and we have clubs that have been around that can't keep up, maintenance-wise, aren't keeping up. Inside, are not refurbishing the clubhouse, then don't have the memberships numbers that they need. We've had to really, be very creative, obviously, to keep our membership up to where it needs to be to have a fiscal budget that can work. But it's been nip and tuck, and the board, knows more about that than I do. But I can tell it's just we're right up against it. And where's that going to go? I think we, in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, we're going to see a demise of a lot of country clubs across the country, not just in Northeastern Ohio. And that's unfortunate in many respects, because there's some beautiful courses. One of our sister clubs, Acacia, I say that because we were built in the same year by the Masonic group coming here to build our club. Do you get guys asking you all the time, why is Lakewood Country Club in Westlake, Ohio?
All the time.
Yeah, and you have to explain that that group of Masons were from Lakewood, and they came out here in the country in the Dover Township area to build this club. But Acacia did the same and had the same situation on the east side, and I had the privilege of playing with a guy this summer out there, and 110 members right now, and had to take in like 40 or 45 people for the year only. Pay us $4,500 for the year, and you can play all you want and eat here and that sort of thing, that kind of thing, or whatever the number was, a few $1,000s. And it's just a Band-Aid. They can't keep it up. They can't hold on to that. And of course, they're not putting anything into the refurbishing part of the thing and they built that clubhouse 4 years ago and still have a huge debt. It just the economics just don't work. That's what's going on the inside of clubs and golf courses. And the outside things you're talking about, Dave, I think are even probably more important to look at, and that is the social aspects of country clubs is changing. And you don't, there's so many nice restaurants now, and there's frankly a fair amount of good public courses as well. And it's not, and people aren't playing quite as much golf. Well, that has really hurt all the facilities. But guess what? The better ones that are making it, you don't have to wait in line and put your ball on the rack at 6:30 in the morning at Metro Park to get on necessarily. There are other alternatives. That used to not be an alternative, a good one. And so people would join clubs so they could play right away and not take the whole day to play, and have a facility that they knew they could count on from a service standpoint and that sort of thing. Today, I think I think businesses are obviously looking at everything too. Economically, what we're faced with right now in Northeastern Ohio is not pretty. For the last couple of years hasn't been pretty, and won't be, I'm sure, for the next couple of years. So we are going to see people continue to be forced to drop out, not their own choice necessarily. Some cases it is their own choice because they figure, well, I got to do this or this. I got to support my family, or I got to do this, or I'd rather have my place up on Chautauqua or something else that they have as a